Hi, everybody. This is CSProfessor Pam with PamTech, and I've got another React lesson for you today. I'm calling this one a byte, but it might be a little bit longer because I really want to make something that is kind of fun. And so we are going to learn how to use axios to get API calls. Coding becomes a lot more fun when you're actually dealing with data. And there are lots of APIs that can help you do that. So that's what we're going to work on today. And for those of you that are just finding me, I help people who are trying to transition into tech, level up your coding and problem-solving skills with project-based coaching, along with my YouTube channel and my Discord community. Now, there's going to be a lot going on here, so I'm actually going to go ahead. I'm going to turn off my video so we can focus on what we've got on the screen here. All right, so I want to do this whole process from the beginning. I've done this in another video, but I just want to kind of go through it very quickly. I'll probably pause a couple times to get some steps done. But I'm going to make a new repository because I'm going to show you in a future video how to deploy this little application using Netlify. So I'm going to call this random quotes. That's going to be the name of my repository. I add a README. I'm going to create my repository. Then I am going to get my link here, start up my terminal. And let me get my terminal on the right screen here. All right, so let me get to where I want to work in my desktop. I've got a folder called My Files. So wherever you save your work, and then I have a folder called, if I do an ls here, GitHub repos. And here's where I'm going to clone this project. So I'm going to clone, git clone, and I'm going to paste in that link. And if I do an ls now, you'll see that there is a folder called random quotes. I am going to cd into that folder. And now I am going to set up my React project with npm create vite at latest. And because I am inside of the folder where I want the files to be created, I'm going to put a dot. That means create the files here. It wants my folder to be empty. I need to use my arrow keys to select React. And I'm using my arrow keys to select JavaScript. And if I do an ls now, you see that some files have been created in there. I now need to run npm install. That creates node modules. And if I do an ls now, we see node modules. Now, I'm going to actually pause this video. I'm going to start this up in VS Code and clean out my files. I'll show you what I've done when I come back, but I just don't want to sort of take the time to show that here. All right, so let me show you what I've done. I've started this project up in main.jsx. I'm going to delete this reference to index.css. I actually deleted the file. I am going to take out strict mode. We'll learn later on about what that is, but we just don't need it right now. I have an app.jsx. I've cleaned it out, nothing but a div with this. And the app.css, this is always what I start with. So I have a Google font here that I'm using. I just import it. And I always start with my padding, margin, box sizing, and here's my font family. And so I've started that up in my terminal. And here's all I'm seeing is Hello React, right? So that is it. Let's just have my console up. All right, so I want to show you this app working already. I've done it. So because we're going to do a little bit of styling here. So I've got this box here, and anytime I click this button, I'm getting a new quote, right? So we need to think about what it is that we're going to do. So my user story is when the get quote button is clicked, I want to see a different random quote displayed, right? Now, actually, my first question really should be, well, where am I going to get this data from? So there are all kinds of APIs, free APIs available to you. I found this API for quotes over here. I'll put all these references in the description. Here is the documentation for it. When you find an API, it's important for you to go through the documentation. And all documentation is not created equal, so you've got to just kind of go through it and find what you're looking for. The main thing we need, so here is the base endpoint. And there's a lot of different things, but we're just going to get a random quote. And so it looks like there's a get method of just /random. Now, I need to test that. I always test my APIs out in the browser. So I am going to copy this. This is a really important step to do. And then what did it say the endpoint was? Just /random. So I am going to literally type in /random here. Okay, so this is the result of what I get when I make an API call to this endpoint. And you see there's the quote is in content, and here is the author, and it looks like there's a tag that says what kind of quote it is. And if I just refresh this page, you'll see that I'm getting a different random quote every single time. Again, really important to test that out. Now, when do I want this action to happen? When this button is clicked. So actually, the first thing that I need to do is basically create my component and create this user interface. I need a button, right? So over here in app, just because this is only going to have this one thing, I'm not going to make my components and pages folders here. So I'm just going to make a folder, and I'm going to call this component quote, okay? And inside of there, quote.jsx and quote.css. I'm going to RFCE. I'm going to app. You'll notice, guys, really, there's certain things that you just get into a habit about what to do. So I want to see this quote component. I need to make sure and import it. So right now, I want to see if I see the words quote on the page, which I do. All right. So we're not going to worry about this message here. Okay, now let's go over here and start building what we actually want this to look like. So what I'm going to have down in my JSX is my parent container. And remember, let's connect our CSS. /quote.css. All right, so in here, I'm going to give this a class name of homepage container. And there's going to be a place to put some things in here. Okay, why don't I just for the moment here, I'm going to make a p tag. And we're going to put the type of quote there. We're going to end up changing this, but this is just so we can see what we have. And H2 quote goes here. And let's have an H3 author goes here. This will just help me as I'm doing my styling. And then I need a button that is going to say get quote. right? Let's see what I see on my page. Right, here's everything on my page. So let's do a little bit of styling here, okay? So I'm going to go over to quote.css, my homepage container. Let's give it a width. I'm going to give it a background color first. Background color. Let's pick a color. I'm going to pick this. I'm going to change it up a little bit. And, you know, we see the color, right? Let's give it a width of, make it 80% of the parent, right? We can see that's 80%, but I want to center it. So if I'm going to center it, I need a margin. Let's give it a little top and bottom margin, and the side margin, if I put auto, then that will center it right and left, okay? I'm going to, where's my stuff that's in here? Let's put everything in here, display flex, and flex direction column, right? Now, the height of this is right now based on the content. So I want to give it a little height. I'm going to use 50 VH, right? You see what's going on now? And if I want to spread these things out, since my flex direction is column, then justify content will be my main direction spacing. And let's give it space around. Okay, so we can kind of see that our things are spaced that way. And align items center in the other direction. There we go. And let's give the button a little bit of, I think I have a little padding in here too. But let's give the button some styling. Homepage container button. And let's give it a background color. I want maybe a darker blue and a text color of white, right? You can see what's starting to happen. Let's give it a border radius of 8 pixels. Let's give it a font size of 20 points. Or actually, let's do this in rems. 1.2 rem. Yeah, we can do that as well. Let's make it, proportional. I'm going to make it 1.5. Okay, and we need some padding around that. All right, so my button's looking a little better. And yeah, and if I want it to spread across like that, let's try to give it a width. There we go. So it's spread across. All right, I think that's enough for the moment. All right, so now we want something to happen when we click this button. So that means we are going to have to create a function that is called when we click this button, right? And I'm going to say, I need to retrieve quote from API when the button is clicked. So I'm going to create a function. Let's call it get quote. And first, I'm just going to console log that because I need to connect that action to the click event of this button. So we're going to say onClick equals get quote. And we need to test and see if they are connected. So let's clear the console. Let's click, and we can see that that is connected. All right. So now, what do we need to do here? I need to make the API call to get random quote. Okay. Remember over here where I tested? I'm going to copy this endpoint from where I tested it. And I'm going to paste it in here as a comment. All right, so now we need to make an API call. You may have previously used fetch to make API calls, but in React, what is very widely used is something that we're going to get from NPM called axios. And one of the benefits is that the syntax is a little bit simpler because we don't have to do the extra step of converting the data to JSON. So first of all, let's go install it. So I need to stop my terminal. I'm going to npm install axios, A-X-I-O-S. All right, and let's start up again. Okay, so here we are going to need to make our API call. So that means I need to import axios from axios, right? The syntax of using axios goes like this. We're going to make a GET request. So it's axios.get. We're going to put something inside of there. I just want to outline the syntax first. This is a GET request. It returns a promise. So the promise is either going to be successful, in which case we go to the then part, or unsuccessful, in which case we go to the catch part. Okay. Now, our endpoint, which is here, I'm going to copy and put it here. I could use any kind of quotes, but I want to get you in the habit of using backticks because in some cases you have to append some data onto your endpoint. So that's why I'm using backticks. If it's successful, then there is some response that comes back. You can give this parameter whatever name you want to, but typically we just call it RES. Stands for whatever the response is. And no matter how confident you are, the first thing that you want to do here is console log and see what comes back. Because right now, we're just testing whether our API call is doing anything at all. For the catch, if there's an error, it's going to bring me back some sort of error code, and I want to just console log that. Now, you might notice I didn't use curly brackets here. Typically, when I deal with this response, usually it's more than just one line. We're going to have to put some more code inside of here. So that's why I have curly brackets for this arrow function. If there's a problem, I just want to console log whatever comes back. So that's why I didn't use the curly brackets there. Okay, so let's just see if we get any data back. So we click the button and look, we got data back. Now we need to take a look at it and find the quote. This is a JSON object, right? So it looks like we need to go inside of this data element. And there's the author, there's the quote, there are the tags. So it looks like what we're looking for is res. This whole thing is res. We need res.data. Let's verify that. So I'm going to change this to res.data. You cannot always assume that. You have to take a look and see what you're getting back from the API. All right, so this looks like our quote. And look, let's try again. Make sure we're getting a different one every time. So yes, it looks like we are. Okay, so this is my quote data, right? What do I do with it? I need to store it in state. Okay, so we need to create state. for this. I want you to notice when you are working in a React app, you are not coding straight from top to bottom. You have to move around and know where you need to go inside of your code. So I am going to import use state, and we are going to create state to hold my quote. Okay. So what is that going to look like? We're going to have quote, set quote equals use state. And it's an object. I can just initialize it like that. Right? So here we want to set quote to this data that we console logged. That's why we console logged it, so we knew exactly where our data was, right? And we want to verify that that data is in state. That means I want to go over here to my components, to here, and let's click the button. There we go. And each time I'm clicking this button, do you see state is changing? So here is our data. And now it's easy because we just need to show this data on the page. So the type, you'll notice this thing called tags, because some quotes have multiple tags or types. We're just going to use element 0. So, but let's just deal with the quote first. The quote is in content. So let's go over here. Here's where my quote goes. So this now changes to quote.content. Right? Let's just see if that works. And we have a quote. All right. Yes. All is looking good, right? And where is the author? It's in quote.author. So let's just replace this. You see how it's nice to have a placeholder, and then you just need to replace it. Now, I want to tell you guys, and we'll talk about it in another video, but it is a good habit because of timing issues that can happen sometimes with APIs if they're kind of slow, to put this as quote question mark. And what that's going to do is that means the browser will not try to look for this content component unless there is data in quote. There's an error message that you'll see sometimes that says cannot read properties of undefined, and this will sort of help, sort of a preventative nature to make sure you don't have that problem. All right, let's do a little testing here. So yes, that's all looking pretty good. And if I want this type, again, the type is in tags, and with tags is an array. So we need element 0 of that array. So this is going to be quote dot tags element 0. And again, we should put the question mark there. And here's that error I tell you about sometimes. Cannot read properties of undefined. And that is because we have to do a little trick here. We need to make sure that that the array is even there. So I'm going to show you guys a trick. Quote dot tags and. Yes. So what is this doing? Do you remember the and operator? When you use and, this first thing has to be true in order for you to process the second side, right? So this is just saying if there is something in tags, because there may be some of these that don't end up with any tags. I'm not sure. But if there is something in tags, then I want you to display this. This is like saying if quote dot tags is not equal to null or not equal to undefined. If there's something there, then we want to show what is here. All right. And so I think we're done. We just, we could kind of make this a little prettier maybe, but basically every time we click this button, the on click is triggering this function get quote. And each time we are making an API call, when we get the data back, we are changing the data that is in state. And because we change what's in state, then this component that uses that state gets re-rendered. And that's why we see different data every single time. All right. So let me update my GitHub here. I am going to do a get status. We see red, which means there's things I need to stage. I'm going to do get add dot. If I do get status again, I see green, which means I need to commit or take a snapshot. So I'm going to do get commit -m quote generator completed. And if I do get status now, I have no red, no green. So I get push origin main. And if I go look at my repo here and refresh the page, here are all my files backed up to GitHub. And we'll talk about how to deploy this to Netlify in another video. All right. So, it's a short little application, but a lot of things going on. And it's really important that you understand all the pieces. And I want you to notice all the comments that I put in here that are helping me kind of think through what it is that I need to do. All right. So that is our little longer bite today. And if you have any questions about it, please leave questions in the comments. Please, I invite you to join our Discord server and also to suggest to me in the comments any video topics that you would like me to do videos on. So keep learning, keep coding, and I'll see you in a future video.